Hey everybody, Mobius Y here with another World of Tanks console video. Today's video is yet another map drive, and today we're taking a look at Halluf. Yes, this map has been around for quite some time. However, people keep doing dumb shit on this map that absolutely boggles my mind. And it makes them lose over and over, yet they keep doing it. So hopefully this will be a useful video for the less informed or for those who simply don't know any better. So let me just change the mini-map here. And on the other team, I've got my clanmate and buddy Abstruse Squid 20. Thanks very much for taking some time out of your day to help me make this video. So we're going to go through this in a class by class basis. Let me just go ahead and shoot a house here. Didn't work. Let's try that again. That's better. Okay, so we're just going to go through this on a class by class basis. So starting with heavy tanks. Heavy tanks, go this way. It doesn't matter what side of the map you spawn on. You go over this way if you're in a heavy tank towards this top left corner over here in the A1, B2 area. Okay, so starting with that, we'll take a look at what you probably want to do with your tank destroyer if you're playing a tank destroyer. If you're on the north side of the map here, you can bring your tank destroyer up into these areas. There's another spot directly to my right. There's lots of spots all along the top of this ridge line here, over this way, and over in this part of the map, and even over here as well, where you can bring your tank destroyer. And you can just park it up here and use it to get shots on any enemies that come down this side of the hill from the far side there, and come into this kind of town area down at the bottom. The same can be said for the others from the other side there. You can see there's lots of spots in these areas here, these sections in the H4, G3, and J5 sections at the top of the ridge lines there. You can also set up some tank destroyers up there using the rocks or bushes for hard and soft cover respectively. Now the other thing to note is that if you're in a tank destroyer and all your other teams, all your teammates who are also in tank destroyers start parking up along this ridge line, you don't necessarily want to join them. You don't want to have a crap load of your tank destroyers sitting at the top of these ridges waiting for shots that could very likely not even happen. The trick with Halluf is you don't want to be the only person doing a specific thing. For example, you don't want to be the only person going to this corner if none of your team is joining you there, but you also don't want to join the entire team that's going over there either. It's really tough to kind of gauge where you would be able to best utilize your tank to support your team. So if you got lots of tank destroyers that are already setting up positions on these ridge lines here to get shots down into the valley, then you probably want to go with the heavy tanks to support on the fighting corner. Now, light tanks, there's two things you can do. First off, you can head down the valley into the town area down here. There's lots of cover in the town. Most of it is destructible though, and the encounter flag also appears here, so you can get some early cap pressure on the flag in an encounter battle if you so choose to with your light tank. Although it is very vulnerable when you are in this flag area, just keep that in mind. But you can bring your light tank down in here and use this hill that the town is situated on top of as kind of hard cover, and just try and play really sneaky, play really stealthy. Do your best to spot whoever is actually camping at the top of the ridges on either side of the valley here, whether it be in the north or whether you're spawning in the south. Either or. So light tanks, you can do a very good job playing a vision war down in this area, using that large hill and even the buildings for cover. This open ground here in this part of the valley doesn't really see very much action because it's just so exposed. You only ever really see tanks down in this area when they're simply repositioning from one side of the map to the other. The other thing that light tanks could do though is you can come to this side of the valley, more in the north areas over here, and see if you can try and spot any enemy advances. For example, if you spawn in the south team and you're trying to spot the north team, you can see them coming through this area over here in these gaps up here by A6 and A4. Or if you spawn on the north side, you can bring your light tank over this way and see if you can spot any enemy tanks coming up in this gap up here in the E1, E2 sector, as well as the D1 kind of sector. But there's also a nice gap over here in F2 where if you position your light tank accordingly, you can spot any enemies moving across there and hopefully set up some early damage shots for your team to try and shave off some HP before the battle even really begins. So those are things you can do with your light tanks. From there, it's entirely up to you what you do, whether you want to keep supporting the ridgeline tank destroyers, or whether you want to keep trying to spot in the northern area, or even try and support the fighting that's going on in this northwest corner. So here in this northwest corner here, all of your heavy tanks should go up this way. Doesn't matter if you're middle tier, bottom tier, or top tier. All of your heavy tanks should go up this way. This is where the most armor and HP is going to be needed, because it is going to be a massive slugfest up here in this area. As you can see, it's pretty close quarters. This corner here on my right is often where the north team winds up getting bogged down. Right there in front of us, at the corner that I just shot at. And the team that spawns in the south tends to get bogged down on this corner right here that I just shot at as well. And there's a lot of fire that gets traded between there. So if either team is able to get tanks to cross this kind of low ground gap right here, you can bring tanks up into the very top left corner of the map, right up here in A1. There's also quite a bit of brawling that goes on in this corner. And controlling this corner is actually a pretty big deal, as it can help your team set up some additional flanking maneuvers, get some shots into the turret sides, or just the overall sides of the chassis of any enemy tanks, especially on this corner here. People can be poking that corner all the way, looking all the way inside with their sides completely turned against you, and you can get some easy damaging shots even down here in the south. This corner is actually fairly important. So if you're on the south side, you can use this little bit of rock right in front of me here, especially if you're a very low profile tank. You can side scrape off this corner if you have some good side armor. Something like an IS-7 or even a 121 could do this pretty well. IS or IS-2 heavy tanks could do this pretty well. You don't want to back up too far if you're on this side of the corner, though, because if you back up too far, this slope will make your ass end stick up. And if you have a slope of armor on your upper front plate like I do on this tank, it actually makes it a lot flatter and much easier to penetrate for anybody on the other side trying to shoot you. Now, if you're spawned on the north side, you can still use this corner to great effect, and I think it's actually a little bit better to use this corner when you're on the north side, especially in a low-profile tank. Something like a 121 or a Wheezy 120 actually works quite well. A T-54, things like that, or any low-profile heavies like an IS-3 can really use this corner pretty well, because this little bit of rock here can better protect your lower front plate when you're trying to side scrape. So that largely will give the option of people trying to shoot through your upper front plate, or try and get some shots into your side armor there if you're over angling. You can use this little bit right there to side scrape quite well. But quite a bit of brawling will happen on that corner, and there will be some shots being exchanged into gaps here. Now, any medium tanks that are brought this way, you need to keep an eye on the map and just judge where you're needed best. A heavy tank with pretty good gun depression, and I mean like 8 degrees or better, so really good gun depression, you can still utilize this ridge top here. It's a little tougher. You got to position yourself just right to where the slope of the hillside isn't so great, and you can still get your gun down to shoot any enemies that are possibly crossing this gap here, or using that corner, or even poking this ridge up here. As you can see, I'm in the T-54 lightweight. It only has, I think, maybe 5 degrees of gun depression or less. I have to use this area here where it's a lot flatter in order to get shots up there. But in order to do so, I would be very exposed in a low gun depression tank if I was doing this. However, if I was in something like a Conqueror, or say an M6 or a T-29, I could use this ridge much more effectively and show off my really good turret armor and just shoot down some damage. The same goes for this side over here. You can use this ridge pretty well. It's a little easier to get some shots in a couple areas because a lot of this area is higher ground. It's a lot flatter, and you can use even something like an Object 140, which doesn't have great gun depression, only 6 degrees, to pretty good effect on the top of this ridge. So you got to keep an eye on where the enemy team is positioned, where the holes are in this area. You also need to keep an eye on if any enemies are trying to flank down through the valley area here, or if people simply try to flank around these two areas here. You've got this gap over this way where you can actually flank around by going down through here, and it will actually bring you up behind in A3, and you'll be behind anybody in A2. The same goes if you are on this side over here. You can be up on top of this ridge and come down into this area into D2 and come up behind them in the D1 sector, and you'll be behind anybody that's using this corner right here, who will be sitting in the C1 sector. So there's lots of options for you in the brawling corner, the heavy fight corner, but the bottom line is you want to bring your heavy tank there. No questions about it. if you're in a medium tank, the choice is up to you what you want to do. You can join the light tanks down into the town area and try to assist your tank destroyers that are up there spotting, and see if you can get some spotting damage that way, or get some damage yourself. You can also bring your medium tank down into this area that I showed you earlier, especially to try and get some early spots or anything like that. Or you could even bring a medium down into this area to try and punish any lights or mediums that go down into the town area. Further south here, you could get some shots down into the town area if the enemy team is pushing for that section really, really hard, trying to get a huge push going on with lots of lights or medium tanks in that area. So I think that covers most of the classes, save for artillery. Artillery is just, open game here on this map. It's very difficult to get good shots in the very top left corner. I understand that, but that's largely why you want to bring your tanks up there, because it's a lot harder for artillery to line up good shots when you up there. It's much easier for artillery to nail you when you're sitting on top of these ridge lines here in the north or the south areas. It's much easier for them to get a good shot on you. But as artillery, you largely want to position yourself over here, kind of in the F0, E0 sectors, especially if you're shooting up into the brawling corner in the top left corner. That's if you spawn in the north. If you spawn in the south, you can set up somewhere in K4, K5, get some pretty good shots up into the brawling corner in the very top left corner there as well, if you're artillery. Now, there's also a couple interesting little side routes all the way down here in the south. You can come down this way from the north side down into the valley if you're in a quick tank like a medium or something. You can also come down on this side over here that I just shot at if you spawn in the south, to bring your tank around this way. Take a much more stealthy approach to bringing your tank down into the valley area. I used to do it all the time on the old Halluf, but this map has been drastically changed since then. It's no longer a valley cutting all the way through to the top left corner. And I think this map plays out a lot better because of it. But there's still a lot of people who are just set in their ways. They don't want to get off these top ridge lines here, like in this sector here or in this sector up here, because they've done it maybe once or twice and had a decent game. So they wind up taking all their tanks up there. That's simply the wrong way to play this map, because if the other team simply steamrolls this area up here, they are able to flank around either down into this area or up into this area. They are able to flank around your entire team that is trying to camp up here, and next thing you know, your entire team is caught in a pincer maneuver. You have tanks down here by the town shooting up at them, and you also have tanks either over here or over here who is shooting into their sides or their rear, and they can just very easily pick you off one by one. It's very dangerous if you wind up allowing your team to get caught in that kind of a situation, where they get caught in between the two major forces of the enemy team. That's why it's really important. You need to know where you're going to be needed most. As I said, you don't want to do anything on El Halluf by yourself. However, you don't want to do you don't want to do the same thing as the rest of your teammates, especially in the same class of tank, are doing as you. For example, if all the other mediums go down into this area over here where the town is, you definitely want to bring your one medium tank up with you into the A1, B2 kind of corner to support your heavy tanks. That way, your heavy tanks won't get caught out if an enemy medium wolf pack pulls all the way into the top left corner. They can easily outmaneuver all of your heavy tanks and just make mincemeat of them. So you want to support them as best as you can by joining them, even if you're the only medium tank up there. And the same thing with tank destroyers. If you got all of your other tank destroyers lining up along the ridge lines here, trying to get shots down into the valley, and especially if the other team sends hardly any tanks over there, you want to kind of wisen up and move your tank destroyer over this way and try to support your heavy tanks. There's some pretty good spots where you can set up your tank destroyers to set up some shots and just, support them, close off access points for the enemy team. For example, you can bring a tank destroyer to this kind of little slope right here and keep your gun trained on this corner in the A1 corner here. This will help keep people from getting way too aggressive, poking that corner right there, getting shots into the sides of your heavies. For example, if your heavies are much more engaged into the middle area over here, say they're fighting it out big time over here, parking your tank destroyer in that particular spot and just looking down that lane can really cover it very heavily and stop an advance altogether, or make people very strongly consider against doing it. Same thing on the other side. You can bring a tank destroyer up along with your heavies. Bring it up over here in this kind of area. Use the terrain for hard cover, obviously, and just keep your gun trained on this corner over here. But as I said, every map, you got to keep an eye on the map, see where you're needed most, see how you can support your team the most. You know, don't go anywhere alone. You'll just get evaporated very, very quickly, especially if you wind up in a 3-on-1, 4-on-1 situation. But you know, you don't want to follow them. You don't want to necessarily follow the rest of your team doing the same thing. So that'll be it for this video. This has been Mobius Y. Hope you will find this helpful. Thanks again to Squid for dropping by and taking some time out of his day to help me make this video. I hope to see you guys on the battlefield or in my next video. As always, happy tanking.